Chairman, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Reese. Thank you all for attending this virtual meeting of the River Hamble Harbour Management Committee. Many of you have been here many times before, and I'm very much the newbie, so please do bear with all my errors and faux pas. All decisions at today's meeting will be reached through a vote. I will call for the vote at the appropriate time under each item, with the vote and outcome read audibly by the Democratic Support Officer. Can we begin by effectively doing a roll call of the names of members on the committee so they can confirm attendance to the public record? If you could unmute and confirm your attendance when your name is called. As it is the first meeting of the new cycle, and as I think it will be useful for any members of the public watching, for members of the committee, and actually most importantly for me as the new boy, if you could just, when you confirm your attendance, just say a very, very, very tiny bit about yourself, your standing and why you're here, literally sort of 10 seconds. So I don't want a life history, but literally just who you are and your role and interest. Shall we start with myself? My name is Hugh Lumby. I am the Hampshire County Councillor for the Meon Valley Division and have an interest in the River Hamble through having used it for many years for boating purposes. If we could then go on to Councillor Hare as the Vice Chairman.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Pal Hare. I represent the Stubbington and Crofton Division of Fareham, and I'm the Vice President. I was on the board last year, and I enjoy being on this management committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Pal. I've got Councillor Burgess next on my list, but I can't see him in attendance.
I was about to say an apology section, Chairman, but he has indeed sent his apologies. It was rather last minute, but yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Excellent. Councillor Mark Cooper.
Yes, good morning, Chairman. Good morning, committee. Mark Cooper from Romsey Town, a long way from the sea, but I used to sail up to 2 years ago a 12-metre sailing boat out of Ocean Village, and I'm a geographer by profession and trade, and therefore my interest in the Hamble is both sailing and ecological.
Thank you. Councillor Rod Cooper.
Yes, good morning. I'm even further from the sea than my namesake in Romsey there. I'm up in Farnborough. However, I have been sailing since 1995 and have kept a boat on the River Hamble for most of that time, albeit for a few years. I'm an active member of the Royal Air Force Yacht Club, also at the Hamble, hence my interest and presence here.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Meehan. Sorry, I may have mispronounced that. Apologies.
No, Meehan is correct. Councillor Meehan, Gosport, Town and Leesand Ward. Obviously, we're surrounded by water. I was told I was on this committee.
You're very welcome.
I'm a king kayaker and a swimmer, but I've done a bits of sailing to cows, but that's my limit on sailing.
Well, we're going to hear about lots of rivers sailing later on, swimming later on, I suspect.
Excellent.
Councillor Quantrill. Lance.
Hello, I think I've unmuted. Can you hear me? Yes, great, okay. Lance Quantrill, County Councillor over at Hayling Island. I have run aground on most of Langston Harbour, some of Chichester Harbour, and a little bit of the River Hamble, and I live 600 yards from the shoreline, but it's getting closer.
Thank you. Well, I'm afraid we've all run aground, and those that say they haven't are going to. Councillor Philpott. Did he make it on?
I did.
You did. Wonderful.
Good morning, Chairman, and welcome. And yes, apologies for that. I was in, then out, and then back in again. So here I am. So good morning. Now I've been on this committee for the past 4 years. It's been extremely interesting. It's flown by, and I'm looking forward to the next 4. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then the last member, I think we got Councillor Park.
Good morning, Councillor Park, as you say, from Eastleigh North. I'm just substituting for Councillor Tonya Craig, who is unavailable today.
Lovely, thank you. And we do have Councillor Bryant here, so your opportunity to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm Councillor Pam Bryant. I'm from Fareham Town Division. My association with the Hamble goes back to my childhood when my father had a boat. And of course, my late husband was very involved with the River Hamble board for many years. So I have quite a great interest in that. So thank you. And thank you for allowing me to join you today.
Thank you. So if we could quickly go through the co-optees, I do have a list from Reese, but I suspect that it may have evolved. So if I miss anybody out, please do shout at the end. Trevor Cartwright.
Yes, good morning. So I'm the ward member for Warsash, deputy leader of Fareham Borough Council. I'm actually just entering my 22nd year on this committee. So as Stephen said earlier, doesn't it fly past when you're having fun? In terms of yachts and boats, etc., I've raced dinghies and big boats for many years actually. So and obviously use the River Hamble an awful lot. So I'm very interested in sailing on this committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Trevor. I've got Andy Valentine down, but I can't see him on the attendees list. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm showing up as Commodore RAFYC.
That's more impressive. I like it.
Yeah, it's the Microsoft account. Yeah, so I'm Andy Valentine, Commodore of Royal Air Force Yacht Club, but I'm here representing the Association of Hamble River Yacht Clubs, for which I've recently become the chair.
Lovely, thank you. Next on my list is Nicola Walsh. I can see Nicola. Sorry, Nicola.
Good morning, all. I represent the British Marine. I've worked in the marine industry for probably 25 years, and I've been based on the River Hamble since 2016, so very familiar with the area and a passion for the river.
Thank you. Captain Stephen Masters. Stephen, you're on?
Yes, good morning all. So Steve Masters, Harbour Master for the Port of Southampton. I'm also a very keen sailor and regular user of the River Hamble from the maritime side of things.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Jane Rich. Jane, are you here? Can't see you on the list of attendees. Never mind. We'll move on. Councillor Frank Pearson, I can confirm is here.
Yes, I'm here, Chairman. Winchester City Council representative co-opted onto it. I think it's my second term of office. My interest, like one other person, is geography. I'm by profession a geographer, so environment is the side of I look at it. I actually am Central Main Valley Ward, Swanmore, and I think about 46 metres above the sea. So unless the worst aspects of climate change comes in, I don't think my interest is any more than the 100 metres of tidal estuary that comes within Winchester district. But nonetheless, as a geographer, I am very interested in what's happening along the river.
Thank you, Frank. John Selby.
I represent the Royal Yachting Association. I'm a trustee of Warsash Sailing Club, and I've sailed from the Hamble for over 50 years. And I've been on and off this committee and its predecessors for about 30 years.
Wow, thank you. Okay, not on my list, but I see Rupert's joined us. Rupert Boissier, are you here, Rupert?
I am indeed. Good morning, everyone. Rupert Boissier, formerly owner and chief executive of Premier Marinas, as you know, located up at Swanwick, and I've been on the committee since 2005. And I represent all the commercial owners up and down the river.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other co-optees here before we turn to the officers? No, cool. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. So to run through the officers quickly, Shall we start with Jason, the Harbour Master?
Yeah, very good morning, everybody. Chairman, Jason Scott, Harbour Master and Marine Director, and very good to see some new faces and old friends too. For the new faces, congratulations. It's a great little committee, this, and really useful in what we do. And very proud of what we've done and the involvement of this committee in making sure we do the right thing. I'm entering my 7th year as I'm nowhere near John Selby. I'll never catch him up. But I've ex-Royal Navy, 30 years in the Royal Navy, from mine hunting, diving, bomb disposal, aircraft carriers, cabinet office, and working with committees at various levels. And I love my job here, and I'm clearly involved. I have no choice.
Fantastic. Thank you. Alison Fowler. Ali, are you on?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm Alison Fowler. I'm the Environment and Development Manager for the Harbour Authority. I've been here 14 years, I think now. Yeah, like Jason, I really enjoy the job. Fascinating, really big range of topics on the environment sector and the development and planning sector that we get involved in. Welcome to the new members that I've not met so far, and anytime anyone's got any specific questions, I'm always on the phone, on the email with regard to environmental topics, if you'd like more of a briefing outside of the meeting. Thank you.
I would highly recommend those. I had one of those the other day, albeit we did it in the pouring rain, which was less advisable, I think. Jennifer Wadham.
Hello, morning everybody. So I'm Jenny Wadham. I am an accountant at Hampshire County Council. So I'm here to present the finance reports and look after the finances, assisting Jason's very able team, I should say.
Fantastic, thank you. So we then have Reese. Do you want to say hello as you're controlling us today?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm Reese from Hampshire County Council Democratic Services, and I will be acting in the background, assisting the chairman in chairing this meeting essentially, and making sure everything runs smoothly.
Thank you. So I see on the list of people here, we also have Bethany Hawthorne on. Bethany, would you like to say hello?
That's just FM, Chairman. They're just keeping the broadcast running for us.
We don't need to talk to them then. Well, we're very grateful for them keeping us live. I see Kevin is also on as well. Kevin, are you in the background, or are you formally joining us?
Good morning, Chairman. I am predominantly in the background today, but just observing the meeting to see how things go.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. And the last on my list, and very far from the least, is our esteemed, now chairman of the Harbour Board, Councillor Woolbert.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, for the introduction. It's lovely to see old friends and some new faces as well on the committee. I much enjoyed I think it's about as long as Trevor, actually. In fact, I remember a previous chairman whose name's flipped out of my head, but somebody might remember him, who always wore a rose to chair the River Hamble committee, and that's many years ago. And I'll remember his name properly later on today. But yeah, it was wonderful to chair the committee for so many years, and delighted to have taken over from my very dear departed friend Keith Evans as chairman of the Harbour Board. So, and you, Chairman, and of course any other member will be most welcome to come and see us at those meetings as well, hopefully in person.
Fantastic.
So thanks for the welcome.
Thank you very much indeed. I haven't received any feedback yet from Councillor Woolbert, so no doubt it will be quietly to come in due course on my performance. Thank you very much indeed. That's all the introductions and the roll call. If we could go on now to apologies for absence. I think we may have done some of these already. Reese,
yes, thank you, Chairman. As noted, I've just received last-minute apologies from Councillor Burgess, in addition to apologies from Councillor Curl and Councillor Tonya Craig.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Item 2 then is declarations of interest. Can I remind members that if you do have any declarations in any item to be discussed today, please declare it at the relevant time. In the interests of getting them out of the way, for my purposes at this point, I will declare my interest as a member of the Royal Southern Yacht Club and also a berth holder on the dry stack, if you can be a berth holder on a dry stack, at Hamble Point Marina. Councillor Cooper, Rod Cooper.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My interest is I am a mooring holder in the river and also a member of the Royal Air Force Yacht Club.
Fantastic, thank you. Councillor Cartwright, Trevor.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm a member of the Royal Yachting Association.
Perfect, thank you. Any more declarations at this point? Can't see any more hands up, so I'm going to assume no more, and we can always cover those when we get to particular items. So next is the minutes of the previous meeting. Rather than going through those line by line, can I ask if they can be agreed? If you have any concerns on those minutes, please speak now. Fantastic, right, thank you. If I could just, if the members could quickly flick their mics on and say they're agreed, that will be particularly lovely.
Agreed.
Agreed. Wonderful, thank you.
Agreed.
Fantastic, thank you. Those are agreed. It's useful to have a few activities to keep everybody focused on the meeting. Item next is the deputations. We don't have any deputations today. I think that's right, Reece.
That is correct, Chairman. Yes.
Lovely, thank you. Chairman's announcements. I don't have any announcements at this point, so we can crack on past that. Although I do very much hope we can get the river trip in, and we can all meet in person at the next meeting. So I think these are things that are a lot more effective if we can do it in person. So now we come on to the main business of the meeting, or the first of them. Item 6, the Marine Director and Harbour Master's report and current issues. Jason, if you could talk us through the report. Members, hopefully everyone will have seen the addendum to the report, which was, I think, separately circulated or placed up on the website, which I think covers some more recent incidents, including a lot of swimming, I noticed from my read through. Anyway, Jason, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. And just for new members' benefit, when you look at the last paper, when you went through, reviewed the pack before the meeting, you'll see a cadence of meetings that takes place through the year. Usually the first report is my own, and then we cascade through the environmental report, Harbour Works consents, and the annual accounts are presented at a certain time in the year. So as you spend a year on the committee, you will see all of the usual cadence of reports come through. And you'll see later on, therefore, we look at harbour dues, and we look at harbour dues in the context of the annual accounts, which Jenny will present. For my own report, as the chairman's picked up on, these tend to be in two parts. My report tends to be in two parts. The first really is key issues that I see as of the moment, and worth keeping our members here as interested parties, concerned parties around the river, aware of the mood music around the river. And the second section is very much a matter of record for how we deploy and use our operational assets. And that helps me then resource any changes, and we review different trends around the river to make sure that we provide a marine safety management service, the crucial aspect of what we do, in accordance with the requirement. So I'm going to go through, really I'll go through it back to front today, just because I'd like to. The first part of those really is the events. And again, to pick up on the chairman's observations, we've seen with the good weather that has been on and off, a resurgence in antisocial behaviour. Really, that is the key element. It is slightly greater in depth and breadth. That's to say, there's more of it than in previous years. We have seen a lot of jumping from all three bridges. And for those who do not know the river and live remotely, we have three bridges over the river: the A27 bridge, the railway bridge, and the M27 motorway bridge. And jumpers jump from all three. It is madness, but they do it. They can land on boats, they can hurt themselves, and it tends to come with associated criminal activities such as trespass, theft, Class B drug smoking, and the rest of it. Now, at the start of every year, we as a Harbour Authority meet up with interested actors in the sector. Those are the police, primarily, both in the context of Hedge End Police, which is where most of this antisocial behaviour takes place on the easterly side, not entirely, but it is most of it. The Eastleigh Borough Council's team, who look at the underlying social causes of antisocial behaviour, and the local parish councils. And we come up with a plan of attack every year to try and work out how we're going to persuade and deter those who are interested in antisocial behaviour from behaving badly. This year, the police are performing a different tactic. They're moving down and forward basing at Hamble Lifeboat Station, which is within 100 yards of Hamble Jetty and the quay. That is a good thing. It's a very good thing that they're down there. The timing of their presence is of course all important, because as most of us as river users know, the tide comes in, the tide goes out. The weather gets better, the weather gets worse. Schools are in, schools are out. So lining up all those holes in the cheese, one can easily work out when the bad behaviour is likely to take place. And of course, that isn't always through the working day. And so making sure that those teams from the police are on site at the right time is something we've been helping them with. This year, there has been a little bit of fighting, a little bit of criminal damage, a little bit of antisocial behaviour, which meets not because drugs and drinking is covered by particular legislation. The Public Order Act of 1985 has a particular section in it which covers antisocial behaviour, which is of a lower threshold, but it's where members of the public feel alarmed at general boisterousness, verbal abuse, that sort of thing. And the police threshold for arresting people, taking action, arresting people where necessary, is something we've been trying to get to grips with, because it varies across the whole of the county. The police there, I think, have put a marker in the sand by moving down to Hamble Jetty, and we look forward to working with them there. To reassure management committee members, one of my primary concerns is the safety of my staff. We have patrol officers who are over at Hamble Jetty, Bursledon, Eastlands Boatyard, where people throw things, missiles at passing boats from time to time. In a linear river, they're dragged from one end of the river to the other, dealing with antisocial behaviour. We can cope with that. But when my team are faced with some pretty foul behaviour, we carry body-worn cameras to provide evidence of that. And we have clear standard operating procedures in place to make sure our teams are safe. Work very closely on a daily basis with both police, the Marine unit based here at Hamble Point, and also Hedge End Police, to make sure that we support them in any way we can. It's trundling on at the moment, I think, is the headline message. We are coping. We're able to deliver the Marine Safety Management Service, but it is, as ever, it is a concern. So that's antisocial behaviour. More importantly than that, perhaps, you will see the annual round of audits. Now, for new members, we are, as a Harbour Authority, responsible for marine safety. I deliver that with my team, responsible to the duty holder, who is the chairman and members of the Harbour Board collectively and individually, And our responsibility clearly is with our wide view of river life and what goes on, is to make sure that we inform the board on the mood music of the river, and make sure we give them sound recommendations, which I will present to you, I hope. But we are as a marine safety management organizer, we are inspected by an independently appointed designated person, capital D, capital P, and the designated person marks my homework, so that I can't just go on and run things like a Middle Eastern potentate. I will do what I think is right, and I will have that measured by the designated person who looks at my marine safety management system and then provides you, as the management committee, the assurance that you can make the recommendation to the board that I'm doing what I should do. So we've had the latest in those on the 18th of May. And the principle with the marine safety management system is for it to constantly improve. So this year I have, as a result of this 18th of May meeting, issued the first in a series of marine safety bulletins, which many of you will have seen. And if you haven't, please, I will let me know and I will send you a copy. But it's published on our website. It's published on that grand thing, Facebook. It's been sent to everybody we have an email account for and has been universally well received so far. So I'm grateful for the positive responses and the kind words that have come back. But of course, it can always be better. And if anybody on the committee with the wisdom that you bring to the party can suggest any way I can improve that, I should be delighted to hear from you. So we're inspected by the designated person. That's happened. We're compliant. Secondly, we are a local lighthouse authority. We run 164 aids to navigation, both with lights and without lights on the river. And it's my job to make sure that those remain functional, fit for purpose. And we are therefore audited by Trinity House twice a year, once a paper audit and once an actual audit out in the water to test the characteristics. And the most recent of those took place after our last meeting on the 22nd of March. And that went very well. There were a couple of lights out with the new light emitting diode, very bright lights. They go on, they tend to skew the characteristics of some of the shells, red or green, that they sit in, so that red can appear orange or tending towards yellow, for example. And we had a couple of those that we have now had replaced. So we are now well in place to retain our Cat C Lighthouse Authority status, which means that we need 95% availability over time of our aids navigation. So that's all in line with what we would expect. So I won't dwell because I know we've got other things to go on with, but the only other thing I will mention is those who've gone through the sharp-eyed will have noticed that we've had 2 fatalities this year on the river. It's always sad, but that is not unusual. They have arisen from cardiac arrest. We are faced from time to time a requirement to work with the Coast Guard, the lifeboat, to bring in and bring together casualties with first responders, the ambulance service, and we try and do that as quickly as we can. Warsash Jetty is therefore our preferred landing point for that purpose. We have very good access here. The lifeboat and the ambulance know that that is the case, so that we can unite first responders with the casualties as quickly as possible. But sometimes it doesn't work. And on the 18th of May, we had our second fatality of a sadly quite young gentleman who had whose vessel had run aground, and he had a heart attack while trying to recover the vessel from being aground. And despite the best efforts of his crew and the combined teams of the lifeboat, ourselves, the ambulance service, he didn't survive, which is hugely sad. But what this demonstrates is the requirement to retain free access to all our jetties. That's Hamble, that's here, so that we don't put in place any obstacles. We make sure the process is as smooth as possible to unite casualties with assistant. Just one final point there, it's the importance of keeping those jetties open and accessible. Thank you. I'll take any question.
Thank you, Jason. Sorry, is it coming through clearly? I'm getting strange noises in my...
It is now, Chairman, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. That was a very, very useful report, and I thought the written report also very useful. Are there any questions? I see Lance has got his hand up, so would you like to go first?
Yeah, Jason, good morning. Thank you. Glad to be back. Does antisocial behaviour extend to behaviour on the water?
Thank you. That's a very good question. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. A variety of aspects of antisocial behaviour take place in and on the water, and we work closely with the Marine Unit. We have our own liaison officer with the Marine Unit, who used to be the Hedge End beat constable, luckily for us, Police Constable Mark Arnold. And they're very, very hot on antisocial behaviour on the water, and have, with the Crown Prosecution Service, secured the ability to put in place Section 35 dispersal orders on the water around the Solent in the event that they need to. So yes, is the short answer.
Thank you, Lance. Pal, Councillor Hare.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Jason. Thank you. That's a really good report. Again, I wanted to ask about antisocial behaviour and the police's role. In terms of the police, Jason, you said Hedge End, they come and support you. What about the neighbouring areas? What about Fareham? Do they come and support? And are they there whenever you need them, or are they there permanently? And my second question, quickly, is: I'm not sure about whether boats are supposed to have defibrillators on board, but are there defibrillators scattered around the harbour?
Thank you very much, Councillor Hare. Fareham are very proactive as a police unit. We have a very strong relationship with both Eastleigh and Fareham constabularies. The characteristics of the river mean that for whatever reason, most of the antisocial behaviour takes place on the Eastleigh side, and I'm saying that simply as a factual observation. Less of it takes place on the Fareham side, but what does take place on the Fareham side takes place here at Warsash. And whenever we have called either the Marine Unit, who happen to be passing by, or Fareham Constabulary, the response has been straight away. I myself had to call on Fareham Constabulary when I was threatened earlier last summer with a good hiding by a little angel, and this was resolved fairly quickly. The sorts of young folk who tend to be involved in this, and it is young folk, evidently it's young folk, there's an opportunity here to provide them with, at a crucial time of their lives, a degree of sensitive and corrective action so that they become responsible citizens late in life. And that's the intent of the police. That's the intent of the Eastleigh Borough Council Social Auditing and their equivalents in Fareham. And we're sensitive to that. But they're at that stage of their lives where they're trying to explore the envelope, and very often will make decisions which they will probably regret later in life, to be quite so nasty to people in authority. And we're quite confident of we know our rules of engagement, if you like. Don't get involved, try to be persuasive, explain why. But when it gets to the higher ends of that threshold, it's time to step back, and you need to call in those with appropriate powers. And whenever we've called in the police, they've been swift. So that is good. What's also worth noting for other members who are new to the committee is that as a Harbour Authority team, we are quite small. We're only 12, but in amongst our little cabal of people, we have 5 ex-police officers one of whom has just joined us from the Marine unit. So we understand the police space. We understand what they're trying to achieve. We're in no doubt that what our limitations are. We are private citizens, as we all are, and our primary duty is to support the police. That is, but it allows us to talk to the police in a language that they understand, and we engender a good deal of trust with the police because of that. Ostensibly because of my deputy harbour master as an ex-detective in the Metropolitan Police, as it happens. So we're quite well blessed in that sense. Coming on to the defibrillator point, there are several defibrillators around the river. We ourselves have one outside the building. All the local establishments, so Stone Pier Yard marinas, public houses have on their doorsteps, as part of their own safety case, the nearest defibrillator is, and it is outside our office, and we make sure that is accessible at all times. Whenever a casualty comes in, typically the lifeboat will have a defibrillator embarked, so they bring that to the party very early on. And of course, the ambulance service and the Coast Guard rescue team who front up when something untoward takes place, they also bring a device. So it's not as if we're fighting each other to get the defibrillator up, but you can never have enough. It's crucial to have that capability available early on, and that's why we have it outside the office.
Cool, thank you. Any follow up there, Pal, or is that okay?
That's lovely, thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Philpott.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Jason. Hello. I want to ask you a question. Probably more a question possibly for Alison than for yourself. It's in your addendum report 1193 and 1195. You've mentioned about a couple of minor oil spills that you've had to deal with. And just a question really. I mean, how would you characterise and quantify oil spills more generally on the river? And are they, is the impact sort of transient? Is it cumulative? And are there any sort of hard and fast ways that you might be able to do anything more to avoid oil spills?
Thank you very much for that. Oil spills come from a variety of sources. Of course, members will know that we are bound to have an oil spill plan to deal with oil spills that happen in the wider Solent and might migrate into the river in order to protect the precious river environment. And that's why we have in place our contract with Adler and Allen for tier 3, the big boom devices to protect the river. We also carry our own second order equipment, which are pads, booms to corral minor oil spills, and we do deploy those from time to time. In the past, we've had a sinking vessel which drip fed a small amount of oil into the river. We were able to boom that very effectively. So we do use that technique, but of course we charge where we use it, because it's not cheap, and we're looking after the environment. It's the responsibility of the actor behind it to resolve. We work really closely with marinas to make sure that they are sharing best practice. And I have to say, marinas and yards are first rate at reacting. They take their responsibilities massively seriously. There are 2 fueling berths in the river, one up at Premier and Swanwick and one down at Port Hamble. And their record is very good. It's very good. There will always be minor spillages from bilge oil deposits, so people will pump their bilges, and it's surprising what can come out of bilges and what can spread and how it can look very bad, but it's very local. So, which brings me on to, I think, your first point about how do you assess the volume on a river. There are, as you'd imagine, there are tables for that kind of thing. So if you can imagine in your mind's eye a series of photographs, much as we're looking at the tiles on our display at the moment, of faces and so on. And you'll have different tiles. You'll have a very light sheen of oil, and that will be level 1. You'll have another one which starts to get into the sort of rainbow effect. And then you'll have the next one, which will be the full-on rainbow effect. And then you gravitate towards the top end of it, which is thick sludge, that sort of stuff. And when you look at those, they're directed at people on the ground who go and inspect oil spills to be able to work out how much has been spilt, and therefore from that extrapolate the level of damage that might be done. And it's possible to look over an area of water space. Let's say we're looking over 100-metre square area of water. Lord forbid. Now that would be not very nice. But if you're looking at that and you see, for example, patches of level 3 using something called the Bonn Agreement, it is a rainbow sheen that will give you over the course, over 100 metres by 100 metres, that gives you a bracket of how much oil has been spilt there. So it's a real sort of wet finger in the air, but it gives you a sense of what you're dealing with and what you might need to put in place by way of rectification. So for that level of damage, you'd be looking at 300 litres of oil plus. Now, what we've seen on the river that you have picked up on are the sort of things that happen in a usual year. In a river where we have 3,200 boats afloat and we have lots of working yards around the river, there will always be little bits of oil, and our job is to proactively minimize that and work with those who may have a cause to put things in the water by pumping bilges, by accidents happening, because accidents do happen, to minimize that, and then look at the way in which that happened and work out whether there might be better ways of doing it. Some marinas have themselves been hugely proactive in putting in place specific bunding arrangements. So there is a means now of using a shipping container, if you like, which then acts as a filter, removing the nasty material from the fluid, and then allowing that to be ditched in a safe way. That's functional in a number of marinas around the river, and other marinas are looking at that. So we're always trying to share that best practice to try and make sure we minimize the amount of water in the river. This past week really has seen very heavy rainfall. I mean, I think we all got a bit of the very heavy rainfall, and very occasionally in yards which don't look, a yard will look, very clean, and it will be very clean. But of course, drainage material, oil and whatever, naturally gravitates into drains. Drains then overflow, and then when the drains overflow, the oil climbs to the top and must go somewhere. And that happens from the M27 bridge, for example, equally. It happens, and that's why we as a committee have pressed Highways England to take charge of their responsibility. I think everybody knows that it's a bad thing to introduce oil into the water column, and everybody is working very hard to minimise that. It's helpful just to have on record what goes in. The river's quite resilient. I've just watched a cormorant pick up the most enormous eel in the river and struggle to swallow the thing. So and it was still wriggling when, sorry, you can't unsee this now, but it was wriggling as it was in his gullet all the way down, and we were agog this morning. Just as I went up to deal with the oil spill that you picked up at paragraph 1190, whatever it was, a seal was up there happily munching away on a mullet. So the river, we're talking about small volumes, but I don't want to suggest for one moment that any volume at all is acceptable. It isn't. And we all do our very best and work together to try and minimise that. Long answer.
Thank you. That's a very, very good answer. David, any follow up? I think it was pretty comprehensive.
No, that was excellent. Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you for that.
The cormorant image will probably stay with us all for a while.
But I would like to put on record my thanks to marinas and boatyards for they're really, they are on top of their game and they take charge of it. And when something happens, they're crestfallen and they do something about it, and it's first rate.
Thank you, Jason. Now that's worth recording. And thank you also to you actually for all the time you've spent answering my endless questions before today, which has been much appreciated, and saved lots of questions now as well. So are there any more questions at this point on the report? I can't see any more. So unless someone shouts, can we move to the recommendation, which is a recommendation that the committee supports the contents of this report to the Harbour Board. So can I have a support for that, please? If we could flip the microphones on. They agreed? That would be lovely.
Agreed.
Fantastic. Great, thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Jason, for that report. If we go on now to item 7, which is the environmental update from Alison. Alison, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning again, everybody. The environment update is goes through items from the spring. I appreciate for new members, it jumps straight into topics which tend to be ongoing topics for the river. So as I said, please do contact me for more information, or of course any brief questions I'm happy to take during the meeting. Item 3 is regarding Harbour Works consents. Now, unusually, we've had a few that haven't been built within the conditioned time frame that is set when a Harbour Works consent's granted. And the Harbour Board took a decision at its last meeting in respect to that process. So as a result, we've contacted those who have developments which have yet to be constructed within the permitted time frame of 3 years. And just to alert you to the fact that that we have one which doesn't intend to continue at this stage, and one which is tabled for later in the meeting, which is actually a renewal of one that is about to expire. I'll just pick up on move forward to item 5. The River Hamble Country Park pontoon, just really for awareness, it used to be larger than it is currently. It's used really good asset for the public to see the river, crabbing, families sitting. There are some antisocial behaviour problems as we get on any public jetty, but we're looking to try to reinstate a section of that was removed. I'm just making inquiries at the moment with regard to planning requirements, whether that is or isn't required to put it back to how it was a few years ago. Just wanted to draw your attention to that one. Number 6 is probably requires a bit more background, but really just to assure you that we are keeping up to date with regard to our duties, with regard to marine plans. It's essentially a bit like a sort of local plan for the sea set by the Marine Management Organisation. Happy to provide further background on that in due course, but that was just a training session to ensure that we continue to be up to date. The Hook Lake Management Study, please do click on the link if that's of particular interest to those of you, if it's within your own areas. It's not something that the Harbour Authority will become directly involved in, but we will support with information relevant to the river. We've already provided various data sets for that. It's part of a bigger flood defence study, and whether there's any opportunities for habitat creation at Hook Lake. Habitat restoration, I'll just add, if I may, another point to that. And for the benefit of new members, there are a few projects underway on the river at the moment. Haven't got updates in this particular topic, but for those already familiar, the oyster restoration project is gathering speed at the moment, and that is about to have its marine licence issued. So we could expect to see some native oysters reseeded back into the river this summer. I'll provide a proper update at the next meeting, as I usually do at most of those, but we're just waiting to hear if they get the marine licence, and then we'll look forward to seeing some reseeding in the river. And a couple of other projects still ongoing, PhDs with regard to restoration of biodiversity improvements, and again, I'll update at the next meeting on those. Item 9, fairly self-explanatory, and more information related to how we get our information, primarily through Solent forums and network groups like this. Happy to discuss that in more detail. It's really ensuring that the Harbour Authority is compliant with all its various duties with regard to the designated sites on the river. One final update as well, our seawall, members will be aware that we are resurfacing with concrete the seawall around our Harbour office. We've got all our consents for that, and we're looking for the contractor to start next month. And as part of that, we've built in these biodiversity improvements at various nooks and crannies and rock holes to try and turn it from just a plain concrete wall into something which will provide habitats. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you also to you for all the briefings you've given me, which have been really, really useful, and for all the hard work you've been doing as well. You were explaining on that harbour wall how there are sort of holes in it that things can grow. It's amazing, and you all do so much, so it's fabulous. Are there any questions to Alison on any part of the environmental report? Can't see any hands, so I'm going to take that as a no. Can we therefore move to the recommendation, which is a recommendation that we as a committee note and support this report? If you could just unmute and say agreed. If they be.
Agreed.
Agreed. Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Great. Okay, so cracking on now. Item number 8 is the renewal of the expiring Harbour Works consent, the river wall at Swanwick Shore Road car park. I think, Jason, you are speaking to this one, or is Alison?
We'll probably work together to answer questions and so on. But for new members again, and just as a reminder, when the Harbour Board grants Harbour Work consent based on the Management Committee's recommendations, we put a time frame on it, a limited time frame, which was 3 years. It's a similar principle to other planning authorities to make sure that adjacent planners and developers are not disadvantaged, and make sure that whole lists of authorisations for developments just don't perpetuate. And so it's a good practice. For a number of reasons, a couple of developments have approached and passed that 3-year deadline, as Ali mentioned in her own report. This is one of them. It is an earnest and correct and necessary repair to the car park wall up at Swanwick, which is owned by Premier Marinas, and they had a plan which we approved as a Harbour Authority in July 2018. Of course, that's coming up for expiry, and in order to make that, to dot the I's and cross the T's and make it appropriately authorised, it requires an extension in order for it to be conducted, and that is the purpose of this paper. At a previous Management Committee and Board meeting, we spoke about a new principle, not revisiting a full Harbour Works consent, which would be time consuming, disadvantageous to the developer, a waste of staff horsepower, and so on. Where events such as this are fairly straightforward and within certain criteria, it is appropriate for us to revisit that in a less detailed manner, and that's what we're doing with this report. I commend it to you.
Thank you, Jason. That was very quick and precise. I don't think this is particularly controversial. Rupert, you've got your hand up.
Yes, Chairman and Board. Just want to clarify what Jason says. The car park is not owned by Premier Marinas. It's owned by Fareham Borough Council, but there is a planning obligation under the wider Swanwick development to upgrade that car park, which was agreed when the original planning consents were granted for the developments up at Swanwick.
Thank you. That's useful. And it is sort of around the side, isn't it, away from the marina. I went and had an inspection, which was probably taking the call of duty.
Absolutely, Chairman, and it, particularly during the pandemic, has been very well used with that public slipway up there. You may notice there's a lot of paddleboarding going up at that part of the river, and it's obviously the most convenient access to the river from the A27. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other thoughts, questions, or comments? I don't think this is particularly controversial, so but if anyone disagrees, now is a good time to say. If not, let's move on to the recommendation, which is that we support the recommendation to the board to approve the renewal for a further 3 years of the Harbour Works consent for the replacement of river wall at Swanwick Shore Road car park. We'll repeat the verbal process. If everyone could click on and say agreed if they do.
Agreed.
Agreed. Does anyone oppose it? And are there any abstentions? Nope. Thank you very much indeed. I don't want to go through a formal person by person vote. It will become very dull. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Jason and Alison, for that one. We now come on to the item 9, the River Hamble final accounts for the year 2020-2021, which I think, Jennifer, you are going to talk us through.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hello again, everybody. So the main purpose of this report is, as we say, to present the final accounts for the last financial year. And I'll also touch very briefly on a proposed revised budget for the current financial year. I just wanted to start by explaining for the newer members to the board why we have two sets of accounts there. So within Appendix 1, what we call the statutory accounts, and within Appendix 2, what we call the management accounts. We have always prepared the management accounts, which prepares or compares the actual figures to the budget. But a few years back, there was some guidance issued by the Department for Transport, which clarified that their interpretation of the Harbours Act was that we should be submitting some statutory accounts prepared in accordance with the Companies Act to the Department for Transport each year. So it's a requirement that we have to go through, hence why we've got them presented in that format as well. It's obviously exactly the same figures. It's just a slightly different way of presenting things. So what you'll see throughout the report, and what I will talk through now, focuses on the management accounts where we're comparing it to budget. But as I say, exactly the same figures that are in the statutory account. And for those of you that are really keen, you'll see there is a reconciliation at the very end of the finance appendices that shows how the figures within the statutory accounts do match back to the management accounts. So hopefully that was clear. I will then move quickly on to the management accounts, and starting from paragraph 16 onwards of the report, and also what's in the Appendix 2. So we have a surplus for the year of just under £44,000, and that's after the annual transfer to the asset replacement reserve of £35,000. Slightly lower than budgeted and forecast at the December meeting. Most of that is due to the visitor and towing income being down. And as you'll remember, when we last met, after the first lockdown, the visitor income was actually starting to pick up quite significantly. We were seeing some really good weekends. So we were fairly hopeful that by the end of the year, we might have regained that income. Obviously, we've since then had lockdowns 2 and 3, which has put paid to that. So we have seen that reduction in the income there to what we would normally expect to get in. The other main thing to bring to your attention is with the introduction of the new Harbour Assist system for collecting in the income, there have been some increased credit card charges associated with that. I think it's really worth pointing out that we have had some direct offsetting savings against printing, because we're no longer having to print out invoices. But the main benefit has actually been the time saving to Jason's team. And obviously, it's a lot more efficient and easier for the river users as well. The other thing to pick up just on the accounts for last year, staffing has come in below budget, and that's due to the impact of COVID and the effect it's had on the recruitment of seasonal staff that we would normally expect to see over the summer months. And just one final thing to pick up on last year's accounts. It's the first full year where we've had the new income charges. So as you'll recall, we changed the method for charging for dry dock launches amongst various other small things. And just to note that the income we've actually received for the year has been very much in line with the original forecast that we were expecting to see, some good news there. Then just wanted to move on to the revised budget, so paragraph 29 onwards, and a couple of changes proposed to be recommended to the board. The first one, to reduce the staffing budget by £9,000. And again, you may remember at the last board, we had set the budget just before it was announced that there would be a public sector pay freeze, which then happened just before, I think, the meetings we had. So we had made provision for a annual uplift for inflation on pay increases. This is just to take that out now that we know there has been a pay freeze. The second change we're proposing is to increase the office expenses budget just to reflect those additional credit card charges that are associated with the Harbour Assist income collection. Then wanted to move on to the reserves, so paragraph 35 onwards, and it's also within Appendix 4. Just the main thing to note, obviously the revenue reserves balance had decreased right down to, I think, £189 we had in there. With last year, that's now increased back up to just under £44,000, so looking really healthy. It is projected to rise again to around £71,000 by the end of March next year. And just to keep on the radar that as part of the reserves policy, we say that in the revenue reserve we would keep no more than 10% of the gross expenditure budgets, which would equate to just under 60,000. So at the moment it's looking like we will have more going into the revenue reserve than that 10% figure. So it's just to say, when we get to looking at the year-end accounts next time, a decision will then need to be made in terms of what we do with the surplus above that 10%. And there are various options that we have discussed before, which include just adding the balance onto the asset enhancement reserve to use for projects to enhance the river for the benefit of all users. One final thing that I just wanted to keep on the radar, don't want to detract anything away from Jason's team, because obviously part of the reason we have such a good position is because of the strong financial management that we have from Jason and his team. But also, you may remember a few years back we were making a contribution of £25,000 per year to top up the pension fund and the gap that we had in the pension fund. We've had the actuarial review that said we could stop making those additional payments. So that has effectively come out as a saving that we no longer have had to pay for the last few years. There will be another actuarial review due in a year or so's time, and potentially we could be asked to make a contribution again to fill the gap. I should say, from what I've been hearing, it seems to be good news on the pension fund, but obviously it depends on how investments perform and so forth. So we just need to be aware that could potentially creep back in. And those were the main highlights that I wanted to pull out. So with that, I'm happy to take any more detailed questions people may have.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Thank you for all the work done on this. And I think a very impressive outturn given the year we've just had. I particularly noted the £189. That was running it nice and close. In terms of questions, Rupert, you still got your hand up. Is that a fresh hand, or is it that the old hand? Oh, it's down. Okay.
Old hand.
Old hand. Okay, fine. No problem. Rod.
Thank you. Just a quick question. It's noticeable in the river the increase in jet skis, which obviously is good news, and that was obviously forecast as an additional income. Is that trend still continuing, or has it leveled off? Where are we with that?
Rod, can you turn your mic off? I think you may be getting feedback. Yeah, I think that's.
Can colleagues hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Yes, thank you, Councillor Cooper. The jet ski explosion in popularity as we inherited launches from other closed slipways around the Solent has continued. The authority made the decision in the early part of this year to double the jet ski launches, to put them more in line with other harbours, and we continue to see the benefit of that financially. The charge is justified. I think it's fair to say that some of jet skiers, if one looks at the Venn diagram of life and you've got two circles, you've got bad behaviour and jet skis in this particular context. Not all of the jet skiers are bad behaviours, but when they do behave badly, they do behave badly. And the amount of briefing that goes in, not only to remind them of our own violence with the river, because they're new to it, but also to advise them on what is required in Southampton water. Southampton water is a particularly busy piece of water. It is open, it is true, and there are lots of fast craft, the Red Jet ferries, very large manoeuvring vessels with what I would call large, what Captain Moore will know about shadow distance. So if you're standing on the bridge and you're looking down your bow over containers, it's very often a quarter of a mile before you see the sea, and you can't see what goes under your bow. And a habit among some jet skiers is to head towards the bow of large vessels and then cut under their stern in order to enjoy the wake jumping. But that places a burden of responsibility upon the master and the pilots manoeuvring those very large and unwieldy craft around a particularly narrow piece of water, and in law, they are then bound to take action if the master of a jet ski doesn't take action and it looks like a collision's involved, which places a particularly, it's impolite, it's bad manners, and so we work with Southampton Harbour Authority to come up with a brief that suits their purposes, and at least gives people the way of working in the Solent. So the extra effort that goes in fully justifies the additional costs. But jet skis, yes, seeing much more of them to the benefit of the Harbour Authority in lots of ways, but it does require a bit more policing.
Thank you for that, Jason. Rod, did you want to follow up on that?
Yes, actually, with regard to the financial side of it, are we ahead of where we thought we might be, or is it about on par?
Well, with jet ski launches, it's very much at the moment we're seeing regular and steady launches, particularly on the bank holiday weekends. Just as a snapshot, on one of the lockdown, I think 13th of May last year, we took £1,200 from jet skiers in one day. So it's a very large number of jet skis. In the past 10 weeks, we've actually seen probably a levelling off of that. And as I wrote in my safety report, we've had 227 recorded launches at Warsash in just over 2 months. So that's probably, I don't really have anything to measure it against, but as an observation, as a snapshot, that's a figure. And I would say that over the past 6 years, if I were to be pressed, I would say it's more than usual. But many of the jet skiers, they come from remote areas, they come from areas that are closer to Lyon Solent, are not constrained by speed restrictions of 6 knots and would, under normal circumstances, choose to launch from there. That slipway continues to be closed, and I have no idea of when it will be open. But when it does reopen, if it does reopen, I would imagine that some people will go back there and we'll see a levelling off.
Thank you. Stephen Masters, Captain Masters, did you want to comment there? I know that Jason mentioned you in passing. Did you want to come in with a comment?
Yeah, I think just to say that, echo exactly what Jason said. I mean, we have seen in Southampton water a large increase in jet skis as the summer months have come on. As Jason said, it's very much a problem for navigation of the larger and faster vessels on Southampton water, and it's an issue that is ever evolving. I think we're all seeing, certainly from the the easing of lockdowns, some people that perhaps would have spent their money on foreign holidays are actually spending their money on jet skis and water activities here in the UK. So I think this year probably is going to be busier than even last year was, and that was a bit busier than before. But I suspect again that it will probably level out next year when foreign travel and other things start to re-engage. So, but I completely agree with Jason. I think the charge that is levied at the present moment is absolutely appropriate, and there is a lot of management time spent both on the water and ashore before they get onto their jet skis going out. In making sure that appropriate information is given. So I thank Jason and his team for their involvement in that and trying to help us on Southampton Water.
Fantastic, thank you. That's very useful. John Selby, you've been very patiently waiting while I brought everyone in to talk ahead of you. Apologies. You're on mute at the moment.
Thank you. Yes, just a point about the incredibly high credit card charges on our Harbour News turnover. So I assume it probably covers charges on the money we take for the Crown's mooring fees. In which case, I wonder, do we take this into consideration when we set the fees we charge the Crown for managing their moorings?
Interesting question, Jason.
John, you've hit the nail on the head there. That's a if I may, the additional charges that we see on the balance sheet are down to an arrangement with a service provider called PaySafe. Really, they can be called anything, but they are one of the credit card houses, and we knew we would be charged at a rate, and we knew that rate would be somewhere up towards 5 figures. But on balance, because that would be subsuming a number of different bills that we had earlier been charged, one from an online system called Hampshire Shop, which brought with it its own charges of around £4,000 a year. We worked with another company, the equivalent of PaySafe, that brought in other charges. The total of all of those was around about £10,000, but they were split into different sections, so didn't really, as individual £4,000 items, raise the eyebrows quite as this figure has. When you take all of those together, they come to around about £4,000 shy of the PaySafe charges, and they are credit card charges. So for every transaction, each card provider, whether one works with MasterCard, Halifax, or whichever, they all charge these different rates. And when you offer customers additional ways to pay, electronic online ways to pay, those charges are non-optional. One clearly has to pay them. So we've got this bill of £14,000. We were paying around about £10,000. So the question is it worth £4,000? And should we then have included that in our charges when we agreed to run the Crown Estate budget? It's slightly more complicated than that, because the Crown Estate contract is, all the money that comes through PaySafe is not only in the Crown Estate's favour, it is of course for harbour dues as well. So people use the PaySafe system to pay their harbour dues, just as they use it to pay for their mooring licences, just as visitors pay their visitors fee. So for a jet skier paying £10, a proportion of that will be a credit card charge, pence as that may be. So it's everything basically that is paid through our Harbour Assist system that attracts a small charge, which then when you accumulate it adds up to this £14,000. When we go back to the Crown Estate management agreement, it's worth just a quick review again for new members about what that arrangement is. The River Hamble Harbour Authority is funded not by taxpayers' money. It's not funded by taxpayers' money. It's funded by the collection of harbour dues under Section 24 of the Harbours Act of 1964. It's a particular marine law that allows all harbour authorities to charge dues that are appropriate, and Captain Masters will be doing the same in Southampton. Every harbour authority charges for the provision of its marine safety management system. And we bring in all our money, our £600,000 a year from that, which then pays for our capability. So our boats engines, our wages, our infrastructure, these meetings, funding these meetings, all of that comes through the payment from harbour dues, which we'll be discussing later. But the Harbour Authority also brings in income from a management agreement with the Crown Estate, whose 651 midstream moorings it manages on its behalf. The Harbour Authority has done that under the current guise, in the current fashion, since 2001. And every 3 years, that contract, that management agreement is renegotiated. That management agreement fell due for renegotiation in April last year. The contract changed in April last year. Prior to that, we were receiving £68,000 a year for the delivery of that service to the Crown Estate. The Crown Estate, post-Treasury rules change in October 2007, needed to go to tender. They went to tender. A number of other bidders for the River Hamble undertaking were entertained. We won the contract based on our bid. At that point, we knew that we would be accepting charges from cards, but our competitive bid was, I think it was £73,500, but we went up straight away from the 68 to the 73. So essentially earning an extra percentage's worth of harbour dues in that 1 year. But that contract then is amortised over the coming 5 years. So by the time one gets to the end of the 5-year contract, given the Crown Estate increases year on year, if this is making sense, the Crown Estate year on year increases, we would approach the top end of £73,000 would be where we would normally be. So in the intervening years, we've moderated the effect of that additional £4,000 worth of credit card changes in that area, more or less. It is not completely clean. It is not completely accurate, but it is more or less, John. And we do not have scope within the terms of the current contract to pass those charges onto the Crown Estate, and nor indeed, I would argue, would it be appropriate, because we use Harbour Assist to bring in the harbour dues element, the visitors' fees, as well as the Crown Estate mooring fees. So those charges could not all be levelled at the Crown Estate. Is that in some way answer?
Yes, thank you very much, Jason, for the explanation.
Thank you. That was a very interesting point, and those charges are indeed quite high, aren't they? Okay, are there any more questions on the accounts?
Chairman, may I?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Yes, no, just to say as well that the giving customers up-to-date payment options and different options to make their lives easier was one of the reasons we chose this new Harbour Assist system, which is used widely in the Solent, and we've received very complimentary comments and feedback from our customer base on the ease now of use of this. Of the system. It's also really reduced the amount of horsepower that we need to throw at the administration behind it. So as a river user, one can log on with one's account and one can choose which bill one wants to pay and when, and then pay it, and it's much more automated. It also provides us with a separate check and balance, so all the good work that Jenny and her excellent staff, John Forte, do on our behalf, we are able to use the Harbour Assist as our own reckoning against that and track funding in a much more elegant way. So there are associated benefits which are very difficult to quantify in capital terms.
Thank you. I think that's useful to clarify. So if there are no more questions or comments, if we can move on to the recommendations, there are three set out. The first is that we note these. If you don't mind, I'm going to take them all together, and unless anyone objects, I'd like to take them separately. But the three recommendations are: firstly, that we note the accounts prior to submission to the board for approval. Secondly, that we note the general reserve has a balance of £43,829, and note that the general reserve balance is currently expected to exceed the maximum balance set out in the reserves policy, requiring a decision to be taken at that time, so possibly the next meeting, on how to treat the excess. And then third recommendation, that we support the recommended changes to the 21-22 budget, which Jenny set out for us. So can we repeat the process? If we click on and confirm agreement.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Does anyone disagree? Perfect. And are there any abstentions? No. Thank you. Good. So that is unanimous. Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. So the next and the last substantive item, I think, is item 10, the review of the Harbour dues. Jason, to introduce these, if you could quickly talk us through the proposal, and perhaps if you could mention just how much in real terms the proposed increase is likely to generate, that will be useful too. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we take this paper on the annual accounts alongside a paper called our asset review work for new members' benefit here. We operate. What do we do as a harbour authority? We deliver a marine safety management system. We make things safer on the river, as safe as they can possibly be. In order to do that, you need particular assets. You need people, you need boats, you need command and control, you need democratic support, engagement, all of those essential pillars. They all cost things. From each of that, you can then go, so what? How much do we need to spend on maintaining a jetty, which then brings us income? So we run this process in the March round of meetings prior to your joining, which tries to look as far ahead as is practically possible at how much we need to set aside into the piggy bank to make sure that those assets remain in the condition that we would expect them to be, to deliver the income we need them to and deliver the services that we need them to. And that asset review work is placed before you in the March round. We then take the annual accounts and match that with those, and then come up with this paper which looks at harbour dues for next year. So that's the context. The harbour dues in the River Hamble are always an emotive subject. Looking at it from different ends of the telescope, there's a private mooring holder and there are the businesses. Crucial to the River Hamble, the local community, and many of all of our friends, because they earn income through it, is the commercial market. The River Hamble Harbour Authority relies on the commercial market because it gives consistent income, and the bulk of its income it gets from commercial marinas and yards on a constructed formula, which we'll talk about individually, new members, when you and I meet. But the commercial market is consistent. It is very reliable and predictable. And commercial businesses also need to be given the conditions within which to flourish, to understand and to be able to plan their lives, particularly in uncertain circumstances during COVID, as everybody. So the commercial market did not enjoy the 5% increase that we placed upon them last year, necessary as it was, but they wore it. For an individual mooring holder, looking at it from the other end of the telescope, a 5% increase is an increase of some description. But for a mooring holder who pays, let's say, £400 a year, a 5% increase puts an additional £20 on that bill, which £20 could be a lot of money, but £20 in real terms is perhaps not a lot of money. The more so when you consider that harbour dues, even after the 5% increase, were 2% less than they were 11 years ago for long-standing historical reasons that we won't go into now. Nevertheless, we offer a competitive set of harbour dues, figure for harbour dues, I feel. And discussion in this committee and the board over past years has indicated that level or 0% increases, which we enjoyed for a number of years before the 5% increase, then to go to a 5% increase, having seen the revenue reserve diminish to almost zero, was not an elegant way of doing business. We have seen this year the increase in dry stack earnings put the Harbour Authority in a pretty strong position financially, it has to be said. And a case could therefore reasonably be made for a 0% increase in harbour dues. But we've been down that road. We've heard from Jenny that we know that pension increases may be round the corner. We know that we are within the bounds of our 10% of total gross income in our revenue reserve, so we're within tolerance for that. That's 1 year, despite the COVID outbreak. We don't know what yet is coming with any potential third wave in COVID. We don't know. We don't know what the impact of pension fund contributions, additional pension fund contributions will be. We just don't know. So there's a degree of prudence, whereas we're up at £43,000 in the revenue reserve. There's a degree of prudence that needs to be applied to this to make sure we consolidate our position before making any decision to moderate any increases that we may make in the future. The feedback from the commercial sources last time, and I'm ready to be corrected, was that a consistent level of increase that could be planned upon in the long term would be something that would be much more valuable. And I think I've heard that too from private mooring holders. To go from nothing, and then to 5% is not really the elegant approach. So my proposal to you for recommendation to the Harbour Board, to accept that we recommend this to the Harbour Board, is that we recognise that we've made great strides this year, despite COVID. £26,000 worth of visitors' income vis-a-vis the normal 44, for example, we're still £43,000 up. We look at this again next year, but in the meantime, recognising that there are things over which we have no control, that a modest increase of 1%, and that this bears out the board's principle identified last year that we have 1% should be our standard sort of level of increase every year. I think we should go for a 1% increase this year, which would deliver an extra £5,500 of income for the Harbour Authority. So that's the numbers that we're talking about, £5,000, and it would give everybody a degree of certainty that we're able to continue delivering on the essential marine safety management system.
Okay, thank you for that. Before I invite other questions, and I see there's one from Lance, so you'll be first. Jason, can I ask you just one question, which is that in effectively having set the budget for the year ahead, that was on the assumption that will be no adverse effect from the pandemic, and therefore by making this small increase, we are also putting in a small provision in the case of some sort of further unpleasantness occurs. Is that a fair analysis, or am I wrong?
Yes, Chairman, that's a precise analysis, and for everybody, the management committee, I have made my recommendation to you in order that you may recommend that to the board. The purpose of the management committee, of course, is what we would call a port user group. You are our consultees. You have your tendrils into your worlds and know the impact of this and what it would mean. And this is the opportunity really for you to modify that if you wish. My recommendation is that it's 1%. Very rarely have we gone against that, but I don't say that nobody should. One could look at the £43,000 and say, okay, well, that's a fair enough cushion. And you might then make the suggestion that 0.5% or 0.75%, but we're talking about peanuts when we're talking about quarters of percent in terms of this. So the big ticket items for me last year were consistency of approach so that everybody could plan, prudence to make sure we continue to deliver what we're mandated to deliver. And I think what the chairman's picked up on that point about that, just we don't know so much at the moment, just giving us that little tiny cushion until we see the other end of this tunnel is the prudent approach.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Lance, Councillor Quandrell.
Thank you. My caution is whether 1% is enough, because given that specific inflation to the business of the harbour may be different from national inflation, and we can see two large elements coming through from pension and also credit charges, as Jennifer showed us. I'm just wondering whether we might be overwhelmed by inflationary increases during the year, which we haven't foreseen, and those being above 1% will leave us with a less surplus than we were expecting.
Jason.
Thank you. Again, prudence. And this is the value of this committee. I think what we've seen, and I'm going to contradict myself in a sense, because we've seen. I'm looking out the window now at a river that is full. You know, I've got vessels coming out. The visitors' pontoon is full. We are seeing the jet ski launches that Councillor Rod Cooper brought up earlier. We're seeing those, and we're seeing additional income coming from those. And on our glide path, we're not doing badly at the moment. Of course, things may change. The key income period for us is the summer period. We are. It's not surprising. It's not rocket science. We bring in more income in between now and the end of September, beginning of October, and we're seeing that being consistent at the moment. And we're now approaching July. Again, we don't know what's going to happen, but the rate of accrual so far is much more akin to a normal year, and it would be a very unfortunate period indeed over the Christmas period if we were to be as low in terms of visitors' income and launching income as we were last year with COVID in its full flight. So £26,000. We will achieve more than that, I would imagine, this year. I'm fairly sure that we will do that. We're almost gusting there now, which is, again, as I say, where we should be. So the things that concern me are this pension contribution that may come. The things that may concern me is an entire lockdown on because of the Delta variant and so on. We just don't know, and the restrictions that will bring on river users being able to travel and use our facilities. So there are those snurglies, but we faced some of that was as bad as that's going to be. That's a dangerous thing to say last year, and yet we have still made our £43,000 from a basis of zero. So despite all of that, despite the additional card charges, we are in a much better position than we were. And you know, Councillor Evans' contribution to that is on record. And I think therefore it is safe to go for a 1%. And I'm expecting arguments to say one might make a 0% increase, but again, it's about that certainty of approach, but for businesses to know that they're going to expect a gradual increase in harbour dues that's measurable, that's plannable, that's really important. And I think to go 5 then 2, I think it might be challengeable to go that high, would be my view, and I don't think it would meet the mood music of the river.
Lance, you look happy. Thank you. Jenny, did you want to add anything at that point, or are you happy with what Jason said?
It was just absolutely what Jason has said, and I think it's worth noting that obviously we have been able to add money to the reserve for this year. We're expecting to be able to add money to the reserve for next year as well. So at the moment, even if the pension contributions were to come back again, we could make those from the surplus we've got. That just wouldn't then give us any more wriggle room, technical term there, to increase the reserve going forward. So I think at the moment we're being prudent, and we're saying just to bear that in mind. It could come in, but at the moment it is looking quite healthy, and I don't think we need to be too concerned that we need to put a significant increase on harbour dues at the moment, as Jason has already said.
Okay, that's very useful. Thank you. Frank, Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm thinking along the same lines as Lance, but quite honestly, I've heard what Jason has just said, and Jennifer indeed, and I think they're fair comments. But we've got to look at we know fuel costs are going to be increasing over the next 12 months. We know inflation is going to be closer to 3% than 2.5%. In other words, costs are going up. We also know we have issues with the pension fund, and we have to allow for that. I'm not saying that we've got to pay for the whole difference. We have to allow for it for our own employees' sake. And we know that most people will be spending their holidays in this country, certainly through till September, when things hopefully begin to settle down. So there's going to be greater pressure on the facilities along the Hamble, which we've got to take into account. Yes, I know we'll bring more in through harbour dues, but there's those hidden costs that, well, they're not so hidden because we know they're already coming through, i.e. fuel costs, indeed pension contributions and these things. So I'm inclined to, go along the line that Lance has said and I pose the question, having heard what you said, Jason, ask, is 1% enough when we know inflation is going to be close to 3% this year?
So, Jason, if you can focus on the specific points about inflation and increase in fuel costs, I think that would be very useful.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Fuel costs, we run 5 engines on 3 boats. We have a fuel rebate from Newcastle, from the government, from Revenue and Customs every year, which means our net spend on fuel is, in the context of our wider budget, very, very small. So we'll spend maybe, fuel each year will cost us about £2,500 after our rebate. So the fuel aspect of it, even if it were 100% increase in that, it would not be overly damaging. Regarding the other infrastructure that we operate, the asset review work that we conduct in advance of this every year takes a good deal of that into account, because what it does is look at the initial cost of an individual item, a jetty, a section of pontoons, etc., and then look at the lifespan of that, map out how it's going to depreciate over time, which bits of it are going to wear more quickly, look at material costs in the context of that annual round, which we've judged is often enough, and then work out whether that £35,000 contribution to the asset replacement reserve is sufficient. And we've made that judgment earlier in this year, and I think that stands. So those particular parts of it, I don't forecast will cause us to make any other, to require any greater increase than 1%.
Okay, we've got best advice. Clearly, Jennifer is nodding and smiling in agreement. So I'll keep my fingers crossed and gamble along with you.
Let's run on the debate to the end before making a final decision. But I think that the points are well made. Rupert.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the depreciation point, just wanted to add it's good. It's very good that the depreciation is running at around about the 35,000. So it's matching like for like, which is what running a business more of this type, such as the commercial businesses. That's how majority of commercial businesses on the river operate. That is good. Thank you for that. Second thing, just wanted to point out the marinas and boatyards, either commercial bits, the increase in the harbour dues from 1920 to 2021, with the price increase, as well as regularising aspects of, for example, the dry stack, actually contributed an increase of just over 13% to the overall pot, and that the incidentals, as I call them, not the river moorings bit, the incidentals such as the jetty charges, which are written in the report, as well as the towing charges, as well as the reduction in the amount of commercial and pleasure craft, all reduced by just over £20,000 in between the years because of what we've all gone through. And whilst I understand what Frank is saying, yes, there will be. It is expected that the river will be busy this summer as people don't go abroad. You can see the river is full, and provided it's all run correctly, I'm sure you're going to see the jetty charges, the towing charges, and the visitor income. The visitor income was down by 3,000. It could well get above 15, 16, 20, in which case you'll then, if that all comes back, you then got the 25,000 quid, which would then equate to if anything happened on the pension. So in reality, I think the commercial operators, and I expect the midstream mooring operators owners as well, the last thing they want to do is have any increase of even 1%, but swallow it, accept that things do need to move on. There is going to be an element of inflation, agree with that, and then revisit this in a year's time when we've got the numbers before us, depending on how the year goes, would be my recommendation.
Thank you. That's very useful. Jason, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Rupert. Rupert will always come in with sage advice. So of course, he comes from a particular perspective, but where it is necessary to question and question these debates, the contribution's strong, consistently so. And I think we strike a balance as a harbour authority. Part of the Port Marine Safety Code requirement that is very clear, that's in the very opening chapters of the Port Marine Safety Code, is that a harbour authority should balance its costs hugely carefully and make sure that it is alive to the requirements of the service it provides and the people who use it. We're not there to make hay at all. And I think nobody would suggest that we should. Forgive me if I come across in that way. I think what we're all trying to do is to walk that. We've got two geographers here. May I use a geographical term? Walk the arete. So you're on a mountain ridge and you don't want to fall down either side. You're trying to balance that all the time. And I think the process that we have through this asset review work, the scrutiny that it's given, the annual accounts, marrying those together, having this kind of discussion, and then agreeing that we're in a much better place than we were last year. We're doing well, but we're not out of the woods yet. Yes, even a 1% thing is yes, it's still an increase, and perhaps we might not. But this is prudence, and I think we by pushing this decision, we can reassess this in a year's time in the normal round. That's why the round we have works, and it affords everybody here the opportunity to judge whether what we're doing is the right one.
Thank you. This is very useful, much as anything, as it enables everyone to express their views and for the board to be hearing that before this gets them, both the views and the actual hard figures. Rod, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I'd just like to put this into context and speaking very personally here, a 1% increase on my harbour dues is going to amount to £1.67 increase, which I think is very modest.
No, I think that's a very well made point, and the fact that it will only generate £5,500 in total as set up. Are there any, yes, Pal, Councillor Hare.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's all about balance and consistency, isn't it? And given what we already have, 1% I feel is good, and I'd like to go by that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other views? I'm keen that everyone should have a say if they want it. Nope. No other views at this point. I think we've had a good debate. We've pushed to whether it should be up, down, or stay the same. I think there's been a very coherent case for the 1%. So I'd like to move to the recommendation, which is that we support the recommendation to the board, the approval of an increase in harbour dues of 1% for 2021-22. Again, can we go through the process? If you could unmute. All in favour, please say agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Are there anyone who is against it? And finally, any abstentions? Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. That has that's unanimously approved. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone, for the contributions there. The last item on the agenda is the forward plan for future meetings, which will hopefully be a swift one. Jason, would you like to introduce this one?
Yeah, just to say to everybody, hopefully this is the last of these virtual meetings that we have, and we'll have an opportunity to meet. Ali and I we can't wait to get new members down here and see old friends as well. It seems to have been a very long time, and I think once people who can come down here and have a look at what goes on and how we do it, everything comes to life. That's the importance of the annual boat trip that's normally conducted at this meeting. But please don't hesitate to get in touch. I will be in touch with new members to make sure I give you as much information as you may need, recognizing that you will probably know a good deal more about the river than one could reasonably expect. I want to take you through the governance, a little bit of history, not bore you, bring it to life a little bit, and make everybody feel involved and part of it, because you are part of it and you're essential to what Alison and I do.
Fantastic, thank you. That was to introduce the forward plan, but
Yes,
we've all seen it. Are there any comments or questions on that anyone would like to make? Fantastic. Can I take that one as noted in that case? Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. That's perfect. Thank you. So that pretty much concludes where we are. I just want to say a very, very few words. Firstly, thank you to everyone who's taken part today. I think we had some really good discussions, and I know this is a large committee, but wow, what a diverse range of interests and views and discussions, and what a friendly group as well. And thank you to everyone for their dedication to the committee and for many years of service. Also, thank you to Jason, Alison, Jenny, and all the team down at the river, because they do a great job, and we've heard all about that today. I think is marvellous, and a busy summer ahead lies before you. I'm concerned that my son may be one of the boats going past you while you were looking out the window, so I'm glad you didn't let out any abuse at any point, because it sounds like he got through safely. And just for one final word from me, which was just to thank my predecessor, Councillor Woodward, for all he did on this committee for many years, and to wish him well now in the exalted position of chairman of the board. Thank you very much indeed. I got Councillor Cooper's got his hand up, so before we close, Rod.
Sorry to come in again. I would just like to express gratitude to Jason and his staff, who over the last 12 months have had a particularly difficult job to do with COVID and managing the restrictions. And whenever I've had occasion to talk to the Harbour staff or phone them for any reason, they always go out of their way to help. So I think from my part, I'd like to express my thanks to Jason and the staff for the fantastic work that they're doing.
I think we all echo that, don't we?
Yeah.
We agree. Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you all. Jason, you're muted, so
just to say thanks for the kind words. Just crack on and carry on. It's good. It's hardly work. It's great fun.
It is the best view on the Hamble, isn't it? Fantastic. Well, I think at that point, thank you all very much indeed. Look forward to seeing everyone at the next meeting, which hopefully will be in person and hopefully will involve a boat trip as well. Lovely. Thank you all very much indeed. Have a good rest of the day.
Bye.